This contraption was devised by one of the greatest investigators of the paranormal. Harry Price, that's him over there, wanted to make sure that in seances with the spirits, mediums couldn't cheat. So he wired up their hands and feet. One false move and caught in the act. Tonight, we'll be telling the story of Harry Price's biggest job, the case of the most haunted house in England, and how some claim it's still going on. We'll interview witnesses and reconstruct what they say they heard and saw. Do you believe in life after death? Some people not only believe, they say they know it exists. They're the 1 in 4 people who, after traumatic accidents, operations or cardiac resuscitation, all describe the same thing: dying and coming back to life, and in between, glimpsing a world beyond. Now, what have become known as near-death experiences were recorded long ago in the ancient Egyptian and Tibetan books of the dead, and by the Greek philosopher Plato too, but they cross all cultural boundaries. They can't, of course, be proved, however sincerely they're reported, but what can be proved is that those involved have had a close brush with death.
He was pretty close to death because he had severe hypothermia, he had severe injuries. On the records, he had multiple fracture in the pelvis, with a fracture in the left wrist, fracture in the left leg, and multiple fractures in the jaw bones, and also multiple fractures in the ribs.
I was so shocked that I couldn't recognise it as my husband. I looked at this person lying on the bed and I thought, no, that's not my husband. Doesn't look anything like him. He had this life support machine, breathing.
Oh, Ron.
I think we'll have to get the hose pipe out there.
Yes, I think it's...
Ron Bell had already survived 2 heart attacks. After the second one, he had to give up work and became virtually housebound. Upset and frustrated, he became impossible for his family to live with.
So I sort of decided to split up. We split up and I took 2 of the children and left 2 with him.
The situation with my parents, my mum, splitting up with my mum at the time, coping with looking after me. I think a lot of things had got him down. He was quite depressed.
But Ron's health was improving. One of his sons was about to get married, and he'd begun to get out and about again. One evening, he set off for a walk at Old Hartley on the Tyneside coast, a favourite spot of his. A friend dropped him off.
Are you sure you're going to be all right?
Yeah, I'll be all right. I'll have a good walk. I'll see you later.
I went down to Hartley because it's a peaceful place, it's a lovely place. I needed time to think, to sort things out. It's a place where I always go, and I just like it. It's my place. I was feeling really good. I was walking along the cliff top path, and it was a cold night. I could hear the waves beating on the rocks below. And I got this excruciating pain come to my chest. Having had 2 heart attacks before, I realised I was probably taking a heart attack. And it just bowled me over, and I found myself over the cliff edge.
The cliffs at Old Hartley are a sheer drop of 60 feet. There was no fence, nothing to save Ron.
The coastline here is fairly dangerous. The cliff is unstable. Anyone getting too close to the cliff edge is taking a chance that the edge will crumble. Clearly, falling from that height, anybody surviving would have to count themselves fairly lucky.
Ron was one of the lucky ones. Though he bounced on the rocks several times and suffered appalling injuries, he was still alive, but only just.
I was in the sea and I couldn't move. Nothing would move. So I must have lost consciousness again. And when I came to, I was further out to sea. And I thought I was probably going to die. And I called out my wife's name and my children's name and names. And just more or less resigned myself to wait. Suddenly I felt warm and at peace. Then it just seemed to happen. I found myself in this tunnel with a very bright light at the end of it, and I was walking towards it. At the end of the tunnel, when I arrived there was a bridge. At the far end, there was human shapes, shadows, and I said,
I'm coming across.
The arms were beckoning me, and a voice in my head said, you can't cross the bridge. It's not your time yet. Then suddenly I was rushing backwards, away from the bridge, away from the shadows.
It wasn't until the next morning that a passer-by walking his dog on a beach found Ron in shallow water. He called an ambulance.
Hypothermia is the danger. That time of year when the sea temperature is about 6 or 7 degrees Celsius. Half an hour is a good survival time, and the average person probably wouldn't survive much more than 2.5 hours in the water.
Ron was in the water for 14 hours, but amazingly, when the ambulance crew got to him, there was a glimmer of life.
Breathing. Got a weak pulse. Scuba knife, okay?
When he arrived at the hospital, Ron was clearly in a critical condition, made even more serious by his medical history.
He had a heart attack in the past, and he was in extremely poor state. He had extensive injuries practically in the whole body. His chance of survival was pretty poor, and similarly the chances for leading a normal life was extremely poor as well.
But had Ron Bell really been at death's door? Did he literally come back to life? And if he did, what did he go through? Dr. Peter Fenwick of the Institute of Psychiatry studies altered states of consciousness in the brain. Ron Bell's case is one of 400 near-death experiences, or NDEs, which he's collected.
Do people make up stories about NDEs? No, I don't think they do. My reason for saying this is that there is a very clear set of features. If you haven't had the experience, it's very difficult to get it right.
Dr. Fenwick argues that because the accounts of Ron Bell and others are so similar, they must be real. But Dr. Susan Blackmore of the West of England University disagrees. She's been investigating near-death experiences for 20 years after having one herself.
I'm convinced that it isn't because we all go to another world, but it's because of what's happening in the brain. Because near death or under stress, there's kind of random firing of all the cells going on in the brain. It could be lack of oxygen, which disturbs the balance of firing, or it could be the brain's own morphine-like chemicals that is experienced as lights, tunnels, hallucinations, and feelings of presence. So I now believe not that the experiences are all the same because we all have a soul or spirit that goes to heaven, but they're all the same because we all have similar brains.
So, the imagination of a dying brain, or as Dr. Fenwick believes, the mind leaving the body to go elsewhere.
It's that the brain isn't functioning. It's not there. It's destroyed. It's abnormal, but yet it can produce these very clear experiences.
I thought I died. I honestly thought I died.
Thank God you're back.
Ron's nurse hadn't expected him to recover. When he did, she remembers clearly what he described to her.
I was very pleased and surprised that he'd recovered.
He told me of a dream that he'd had about the tunnel and the shapes and the light, and he was going towards it. It was very convincing, and other patients have told me of the same dream and experience they've had when they've been in that state.
It's lovely to see you looking so well, ever so pleased. I said you can come out.
As Ron Bell was to discover, there's something else which those who claim near-death experiences usually find.
Most people lose their fear of death. A lot of people feel that they have a mission that they have to go through. There's something for them to do in this life. And many people are more social. That is, they think more about their friends.
My father was probably quite a selfish person, rather inconsiderate. He never had a great deal of time for us when we were children. He was around, but never for us. Since the accident, I think he's definitely become more responsible towards his family.
The experience also brought about a reconciliation with his wife. They decided to give their marriage another try. Ron's son Robert got married too. After the ceremony, the couple visited him in hospital.
I think he's got more of a sanctity for life. He's got more of a, what would you say, a zest for life, really. He's a lot more of a caring person than he was.
I realised that I'd been given another chance. But if I was to die tomorrow, I would not be afraid. I'm not afraid of death. This is where we'll all go eventually. I know because I've been there.
Near-death experiences are being taken so seriously that tests are now being carried out in the cardiac units of hospitals around southern England. Objects are being hidden high out of patients' view, and if those who've been near death can later describe the objects, it follows they must have left their bodies. We'll leave you for a moment now, but we'll be back with the most haunted house in England.